Hi everybody, I hope you're doing marvellously well. This is a fun video. If you cast your minds back to a week or two ago, we had the distinct pleasure of trying out the Tascam Model 24. Now, the Model 24, probably not the right word, but it's a more traditional recording console that also is a digital interface. And I did it under a lot of pressure. There were so many of you asking for us to review it. I think there's a lot of guys and girls that came up in the industry and were used to this world. And maybe they're enjoying using DAWs, but they're missing the structure, the idea of a console where you've got the channels in line. And the Model 24 really fulfills that because it's a recording console in the traditional sense, but it also has, like I said earlier, an interface built in, so you can use it in conjunction with your DAW. What a wonderful idea. Well, we used that at the Village with a band called Unsung, which I believe the singer was, I think, Eric, like 15, like a 15-year-old singer, like 16, 17-year-old band. Really great young kids. And it was recorded by my dear friend and my daughter's godfather, Mr. Phil Allen, who is a wonderful guy, a Grammy Award winner himself. He recorded Adele's Someone Like You, a little song that sold gazillions of copies. Wonderful, wonderful guy. So he recorded the band. They were a band he's worked with that he actually teaches, because he teaches at a school called the Los Rios Rock School, and he teaches recording there, and he's freaking awesome. So we brought him in. He recorded the song from scratch at the Village. We filmed the whole thing. There's a link down below. You can download the Multitracks. So what we decided to do now was do a breakdown, and he's actually mixing those tracks the way that he mixed them for the video. So sit back and enjoy his mix of Come Together by the band Unsung, obviously a cover of the Beatles, Come Together. And don't forget, you can download the Multitracks, and if you're an Academy member, Produce Like a Pro Academy member, there's 2 more songs that were recorded that day that we have the Multitracks for inside of the Academy, and they also are going to have mix breakdowns. So that's a special bonus for all of the Academy members. If you're not already a member of the Academy, please check out the link below and join us. So without further ado, let's go over to Mr. Phil Allen, and he's going to do a breakdown of the song.
So we just wrapped up recording at the Village with the band Unsung using the Tascam Model 24. Now this machine, I was very excited to use it. I definitely anticipated some challenges and some drawbacks and things like that working on a all-inclusive 24-track machine. We weren't going to use any of the outboard gear at the studio. We had a great set of mics and great musicians and a wonderful room at the Village. But other than that, everything was contained inside this box. Coming out of it, I will say I was more than pleasantly surprised. This machine's amazing. I think from a workflow standpoint, that sort of analog workflow of single channel, single track, plug it in, everything is there for you. There's something unbeatable and invaluable about the ability to just get going and have all your tools right there in front of you. So if you are a band or an artist who maybe you just want to record your rehearsals or your live shows and you just need to get it going quickly, so much better to use something like this than to have to open up a laptop, open up a session, arm your tracks, get your inputs going, plug into your interface. Before you know it, 30 minutes has gone by and it's a mess. This machine makes it so easy. From an engineering standpoint, it makes it really fun. It was all kind of flooding back to me. My first kind of recording device I ever used was a Tascam. It was the 424, I think it was a 4-track cassette tape recorder. That's, where I cut my teeth as a young man. So it was very fun to kind of get back into, and it was all flooding back to me of having to do all this stuff. And, one thing I will say about it is that it really keeps you involved and it keeps you attentive. You have to be paying attention all of the time. And I didn't really realize how much when I am working in Pro Tools or any other DAW on a computer, how easy it is to just kind of hit record, and in the back of your mind you're going, I'll get a couple more takes, it doesn't matter, and I'll sort through all of them when I get back and the band leaves. Which is relaxing, but it's not the best way to record sometimes. I'd say probably most of the time. when you are working on a machine like this that has more of an analog workflow, even though it is digital, you have to be paying attention to every single thing that you do. You have to get your parts right. You got to get your tones right. You have to communicate with the band about what they're going to play. So it was a very satisfying, very involved process. And I think for the band too, they're a young band who's never recorded on quite like this. They've always done things in DAWs. It was cool to watch them sort of rise to the occasion and sort of have to be on it all the time, and that mentality of, you know, I can't half-ass this take. I have to get it all the way through. And it doesn't matter if I mess up the first note or the last note, I have to get this right. So yes, it's a little bit more stressful in some ways, but that could be a very good thing, especially if you are trying to better yourself or you're trying to improve your skills as a session musician or as a songwriter or as an engineer. You know, having to get my punches right was all coming back to me. You know, I can kind of get them right in Pro Tools, and I could fix them later. But on this, I had to time my punches perfectly, which was awesome. And keeping an eye on gain staging and keeping an eye on how many tracks I was using was quite difficult. At the end of it, though, I will say it was a much more satisfying experience than working entirely in a DAW. So I loved it. I loved everything about the functionality of it. It was so easy and so intuitive. The most surprising part, however, was the sound quality. Maybe I had very low expectations going in because of my experience with my first recorder back in the 90s, you know, where the preamps were really just doing their job and the EQ was there, but it was just doing its job. I was blown away by the quality of the pre's, and the one knob compressor in this thing was incredible. The EQ sounded great. The effects sounded great. You know, we got our tones up and I hit play and listened back and was a little bit like, am I really hearing what I'm hearing? This sounds like a record. And again, we didn't use any of the fancy pants pre's that were in the studio, even though they were all sitting there staring us in the face. So you're definitely not sacrificing quality really with this. I mean, you can make a record with this machine. So there's so many benefits to it. I absolutely loved every part of the actual functionality and the sound quality of this device. It was very fun, a very enjoyable experience. And so yes, on paper, technically there's lots of things you can do inside of a DAW that you can't do on this machine, but that doesn't make them better, you know? As an artist and as a songwriter, as a producer, as an engineer, sometimes taking away some of those tools and giving you just the bare necessities really brings out the best in what you can do and get some kind of things going on in your brain that you wouldn't have been thinking about had you had all of these plugins at your disposal. So I want to mix it. You can absolutely mix inside of the Model 24. The functionality is all there. You can play off the multitrack through the mixer, use the EQs, use the effects, and print onto the last two tracks of your 24-track recorder. And I got some really rough board mixes that we can listen to from that. However, I wanted to have a little bit of fun. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to mix on Softube's Console 1 system. If you're unfamiliar with this, it is a hardware controller that is unlike any other that I've ever used. I've actually been pretty anti-hardware controllers when it comes to mixing inside of a DAW. I think the idea of scrolling through menus and having to find the right button, and then the LEDs are sort of like wonky, and I'm trying to figure out where they're going, and half the time I'm like, I'm just gonna use my mouse. So a lot of times I've mixed with the hardware controller in front of me, and I'm just using my mouse for everything anyway. But this particular one, the Softube Console 1, is very much in line with what we just did. It's still in the digital universe, but it has an analog workflow. It gives you the knobs, and I have the fader pack as well. But all the knobs on there are laid out like a console. So it has a shape section, which is like a gate and a transient designer, and one knob per function. It has an EQ section, 4-band EQ, and one knob per function. So when you need to boost your high end, you know exactly what knob to reach for. And it has a compressor in it, which is awesome. Again, one knob on there. And so it's all laid out in front of you, and you're not scrolling really through anything. The best feature, in my opinion, is it actually gives you a drive feature, which emulates hitting the console harder for that particular track. And it gives you a little more functionality than a typical analog console and gives you a little bit more flexibility. But you know, one of the most fun parts about mixing on a console is sort of abusing it and hitting it hard and seeing how it slams things. And every console hits a little bit differently. And so this is a really fun way to sort of add some excitement and shape your tracks using the Console 1. So I do have the regular unit, and I have this fader pack, which gives you 10 motorized faders. And there's something about that too, you know, it brought me back to mixing on consoles where you can have your fingers on different faders at different, you know, at the same time. And you can kind of shape them and bring them up and down as opposed to clicking through with a mouse. And it sounds like such a small detail, but it really does make a difference, at least to me. Mixing and being able to balance things and hear how they interact with each other to be able to adjust things in real time altogether. And they're wonderful feeling faders. So this particular unit I love, even though again it's in the digital world, it feels like an analog console and brings that immediate workflow back to you, and having everything laid out in front of you, you can just grab it and go. And that's just all the functionality. The sound of it is incredible as well. So it does emulate analog consoles. The one that comes with it is the SSL 4000, which I love because that's the console that I mixed on up at Spitfire with Warren. So, I'm very familiar with it and I love the sound, and I will say it's scary how close it is to sounding to the real deal. So everything about it is absolutely fantastic in terms of sound, but you can load up other consoles as well. So I'm gonna do, we did 3 songs. I'm gonna do one with the SSL 4000 emulation. I'm going to do one with their American Class A emulation, a little bit more aggressive and punchy. And I'm going to do one with the British Class A for that classic sort of British sound. So you can kind of hear the differences between them. And the sound, yes, is different between them, but also the way that they emulated how the EQs look and how the compressors act and things like that, and what you are limited to in terms of frequency bands and how they boost and cut and different things. There is something about being limited in that way, where you don't have every parameter and every knob at your disposal and every compressor and every EQ, where you're not just scrolling through things and maybe choosing the wrong one just because you want to. When you have them all laid out and every track goes through that sound, it really does have that, quote unquote mojo that analog consoles have, and the workflow is incredible. So I'm gonna try to keep my mixes short, under an hour hopefully, to kind of keep that workflow going and to keep that momentum going that we had. Analog workflow, digital world. So let's get to it. Let's mix these songs. So let's take a look at mixing this cover of Come Together, recorded at the Village by the band Unsung. And to keep in the spirit of analog workflow, I will be doing the whole thing on Softube's Console 1 system. So I've got their American Class A console loaded up on here. And what I'm gonna do is just kind of go through as if I was mixing on a physical console. And I love the way that the workflow kind of keeps you focused on this thing. So let's just start going through it and I'll talk you through it as I go. Let's give it a listen. Just as it is, everything's kind of up at 0 right now. Cool. I'll probably bring everything down. Start with my overheads and start bringing things in and build it sort of from the ground up. So I'm just going to take everything and start knocking it down so I can bring it up. You could mute, but I like to bring the faders up. When you have faders like this, it's nice to kind of touch them and have some fun with it. So I'm going to bring everything down except for my overheads, actually. I've got my kicks and my snares and my toms all going into submixes, so I'll bring the submixes down. You can see my kick submix right there, my snare submix there, and I love this interface here because as soon as you touch a fader, it selects that track, and I can just kind of see where I'm going by touching all around here. I've got my rooms and my overheads both going into my overhead submix there. So let me just take my rooms down here. There's my rooms. I'll bring those down, leave my overheads and my overhead submix up, and I have all my submixes going into a drum bus here on track 13 there. So everything else after that, I'm going to bring down. See my bass DI, bass amp. Also, I'll just bring my bass bus down here, my electric guitar bus, my lead guitar bus is going to come down as well. Flip over to my next page here. Lead vocal bus coming down, my backing vocal bus, and I'll leave my effects up for now, just in case I kind of want to use any of those. All right, let's go back here, and I will start with my overheads. And again, incredibly impressed with the pre's that were inside of the Tascam. We didn't do any processing, and it sounds fantastic. So again, the analog workflow, kind of working on a console here. You just go top to bottom or left to right as it's laid out here, and I'll start kind of shaping this guy. Top end, make some snap out of that. Now, right now, this compressor is the one that kind of comes with their American Class A console, but it's actually got 2 flavors. So you can actually kind of go in there and swap out different compressors. And I'm gonna use, they have the smooth one on there right now. I'm gonna flip it over to the punchy one. So I'm gonna load up the compressor on here. I'm gonna go to the punchy Class A. Cool. And as soon as you start twiddling the knobs in these guys, it actually puts it in the chain, which I absolutely love. And it's so easy and so quick to get some good sounds on this guy. Now, easily my favorite feature on this is the drive feature. And what this does is it lets you sort of simulate what it would sound like if you were hitting the console harder. And it's separate from like the input gain, which is really more just for like proper digital gain staging. So this drive feature is awesome to mix with because you can start sort of coloring the sound one way or another. And it comes with a character control, so you can make it like kind of brighter and more up front or darker and kind of back. It's really fun. So this is what it sounds like if you were hitting an analog console a lot harder. It really comes to life. That's without it. I just bypassed the channel strip. And then back in. Cool. Take a look at where I'm at my master fader over here. Cool. All right, let's start bringing in some kick drum. Solo this guy for a second. Let him come back around. There we go. All right, let's have some fun with this guy. Don't roll off too much there at the end, but let's mess around with this EQ. I love this analog style EQ. You know, sometimes having ultimate control over everything is cool, and then sometimes you just need it to sound good and musical, and that's what this one does. Nice. So another awesome feature of this that you don't necessarily find normally on consoles, but you could absolutely incorporate into your analog workflow. We used to have these patched in when I was mixing with Warren up at Spitfire. Transient designers, these sort of like punch and sustain controls. And these guys can really help you shape drums. Wow, it's great. Or you can bring out the sustain. Let's let it come back around here. Gate this a little bit, get rid of some of that bleed. Let's check out this compressor. Again, I'm going to load up the punchy compressor on this guy because I like it punchy. Drive the console a little bit harder. Get that sort of splatty smack sound there. Now, I only have one kick mic going here, so I'm doing all this on my kick submix track. I could easily do it on my my kick track as well, and similar results. But on some of these other tracks, I'll be doing these on the individual tracks and then using my submix for more general purpose stuff. And this compressor's got a great blend control, so you can kind of bring in your dry. Let's hear it with some overheads. Checking the phase there. Just sounds better inverted to me. Love the EQ points here. Just lets you kind of mess around and shape your sound. A little more aggressive there. All right, we'll have a little more fun with that once we kind of get a blend going. My first kind of pass through, I'm just getting things, trying to get them kind of close to where I want them. And then I'll hear it better once everything's in there. Let's bring in some snare drum. All right, let's listen to our top here. A little bit of ringing going on there. Try gating this a little bit. Let's see if we can get rid of some of that bleed. The choice between a hard gate and a soft gate there. A little punch. Never hurt anybody. Drive that console. Hello. Add that punchy compressor in. And again, one of the things I love kind of on mixing on a console compared to just using plugins is that a lot of these decisions are sort of made for you. I don't have to search around through millions of different compressors. I just use the one that's there. A lot of times that's all you need. And it does help give the sound more of a kind of cohesive feel to it. Cool, now let's bring in the snare bottom. I will have to invert this guy. There's no invert button on the Tascam, so our snare bottom is probably flipped compared to very loud. Cool. Check how we're doing on my master fader here. Yeah, let's have some fun with these toms. Actually, I'm going to go ahead and just loop that fill right there and start kind of tweaking these toms a little bit. Yeah, you'd hear that a million times. Tom Submix, let's bring that up. They're gonna be great. Pan these guys around a little bit. Cool. All right, let's have some fun with these. Now I might gate them a little bit, but this is kind of a loud and ruckus song, so I might try to leave them open for a bit, just to see if I like what they're doing. Now, they sound already pretty punchy, so I'm gonna kind of refrain from putting any compression on them right now. Just kind of try to shape them the way that I want. Great little resonance and room tone out of that one. I want to make this one a little brighter. Yeah, and these shaping controls are pretty incredible, especially for things like toms. Now let's try flipping our overheads, see how they're going with the, flipping our toms, sorry, to see how the phase is in relation to the overhead. Tighter that way, a little beefier that way. I think I'll go there. Maybe that loop so you guys don't go crazy here. I get to mess around with some rooms in a second. Always a fun thing. Oof, love it. Some bleed from the guitars and bass. Let's try crushing this guy a little bit. Just see where it takes us. Toms are sounding great. Makes me want to go back and kind of get my kick a little deeper. I'm actually pretty happy with the drums. Kind of as a starting spot there. And then let's look at our drum bus, might as well. Drive that guy a little bit. Now this one's really cool. So a lot of times you put a compressor on a drum bus and you get the problem of the kick or the low end kind of triggering the compressor more than the mid and high frequencies. So you can send your filters to sidechain your compressor on this guy. So I can do filters to compressor. Kind of roll off some of that low end, and you can see it's compressing a little more evenly now. There we go. Blend that in. I was pretty happy with that. Let me just do some gain staging on my master fader here. Well, it's not bad actually. All right, let's move on to some bass. And I just love slamming stuff on the quote-unquote analog console here. All right, let's see what we got going on with this bass. There's our DI. Nice and aggressive. Just gonna go ahead and hit the console hard right off the bat there. I'll probably keep the smooth compressor on this guy. Let's see what's going on with our amp here. Check our phase. So this is kind of a great example. I'm of the opinion that phase or polarity is not always black and white. It's not always right and wrong. You can kind of shape the sound and use the phase invert or the polarity invert button to sort of bring out certain parts of the sound, and sometimes they're just two different sounds, not necessarily better or worse. And this kind of is falling into that category. One's more focused and one is a little bit floppier and boomier, and neither of them are nearly right or wrong. Maybe I'll hear it with my drums and see which one I like the best. Or sometimes what I'll do is I'll actually just roll off all the low end off of like my amp, and I'm only using my amp to kind of bring out that high end brightness. If I can't choose, or if I want to just keep the low end very clean from the DI. So let's see. You see, that really brings out the pop of the strings. So that's got that modern sort of scooped sound. Okay, I like that one. I'm going with it. Maybe I'll roll off a little low end. Drive that bass even more. Oh yeah. So you see its character knob, I can kind of make it brighter by turning it up, a little smoother by turning it down, but it's still driving pretty hard. I might not even touch the EQ on this for a little bit. A little bit of low end on my bass bus. Let's move on to some guitars. We're going to come back and fiddle with these as we got started to blend stuff in. All right. Got rhythm guitars. Just really one guitar. We go to the individual track there and pan it. Clean up that low end a bit. I got a little aggressive on that bass amp. This, for example, is one of the things I love about having more analog feel and analog consoles, is when balancing the bass DI and the bass amp, you can have your finger on two different faders and sort of like blend them up and down as opposed to having to move your mouse back and forth. And it's just these tiny little things that make mixing somewhat easier and definitely more enjoyable. A little bit of bite on that guitar, never hurt anybody. And that other guitar. Now that I'm hearing everything in here, I kind of want to go back and beef up my kick a little bit. Like what's going on there. Bringing my overhead, blending it back in, see what it's in. Cool, let's check out some vocals. Start with this radio vocal here and have some fun with that. Bring my vocal bus up, and then I can mess with kind of that telephoned out vocal there. Find a good spot to move here. That. Clear.
He just do what he please. Yeah, come on, that's how he come. he just do what he please. Yeah, here come on, that's how he come.
Cool, like where that's sitting. Telephone nights are great.
Hopefully roll the he got
Let's try the other vocal here.
down to his knee. Got to be a joker, he just do what he please. Yeah, here come on.
This is on the normal, like the Lewitt over here.
Yeah, you can feel his disease come together right now over me.
Now this guy's really clean sounding, so I think I'm gonna abuse the drive control here in a minute just for fun.
He bad production, he got Warriors Gumbo, he got oh no sideboard, he won side no cracker, he got feet down below his knees. Cold you in his arms, yeah, you can feel his disease come together right now over me. He bad production, he got Warriors Gumbo, he got oh no sideboard, he won side no cracker, he got beat down below his knees. Cold you in his arms, yeah, you can feel his disease come together.
So you can see the power of that drive control right there. I mean, it really just sort of saturates that sound. It is one of the beautiful things about using analog consoles. The kind of harder you hit them and the more you abuse them, the more fun they get. And it's so quick to kind of get pretty dang close to the sound that you want. Let's look at this backing vocal here and bring this guy in.
Oh, he won. Hopefully, roll the he got hair down to his knee. Got to be a joker. He just do what he please. Yeah. Oh, he won. Hopefully, roll the he got hair down to his knee. Got to be a joker, he just do what he please. Yeah. Oh, he won. Hopefully roll the he got hair down to his knee. Got to be a joker, he just do what he please. Yeah. Oh, he won.
Nice. So just like that, we're pretty close. Now, one of the great things about this, and again, like kind of working on an analog console, and this isn't, again, anything you can't do in a DAW. You can always arrange your tracks the way that you want them to and preload things and have presets, but honestly, having the physical stuff here, or whether you're doing it on a controller like this or on a console, the workflow really does keep you focused and keep you moving forward and not get too, deep into the pits of, what specific EQ should I be using on my bottom snare mic, when really all you needed to do was roll off a little bit of low end. So let's start up here. Let's see if we can hear anything. And maybe I'll start blending in some effects. So I am sort of doing more of a console style effect system here where all of my tracks are being sent to my 4 processors here: a reverb, a slap, a delay, and then a pitch shifter widening one. Now, I'm probably not going to use all of these, but I like to have them set up again the way I would on a console so that if I want to, I can kind of send something over to it just in case. Now, once I get closer, one of the cool things about, again, working on a console or something like this is that when you start bussing things, this particular console one from Softube, they have a really neat feature that they call the favorites. I think the early modes were called layer mode, and now it's called favorites. And you can see my buses, for example, track 25 there, my BV bus, has a star next to it. And I've starred all of my final buses, the things I would go into, the same way that you would bus everything in an analog console. And then when I go into layer mode, it focuses only those onto my console. So I can just start mixing on my drum bus, my bass bus, my guitar bus, my vocal bus, etc. So it is a great way to sort of like out of sight, out of mind, get some of those individual tracks once they're sitting where you want them to, and you can just focus on your overall mix after that. It's a really cool feature. And again, on an analog console, you do that same thing on your groups or your buses, depending on what console you're working on. So let's give it a listen from the top here. Now I'm just looking at my buses here. Drum bus.
Here come all flats up, he come grooving up slowly. He got used to eyeball, he won't hopefully roller. He got hair down to his knee.
Punchy one on the drum bus.
Joker, he just do what he please. Yeah. Yeah. He wear no shoe shine, he got two damn football, he got monkey fingers, he do Coca-Cola, he said, I know you know me. One thing I can tell you is you got to be free. Come together right now over me.
Put some compression on that lead vocal bus here, just to smooth out that transition between the two. Because a little bit of compression never hurt anybody.
One thing I can tell you is you got to be free. Come together right now over me. One thing I can tell you is you got to be free. Come together right now over me.
I'm gonna go back and get my snare up a little here.
Come together right now over me. Keep that production, he got over his gone he got no sideboard, he won't side no cracker, he got beat down below his knees. Cold you in his arms, yeah, you can feel his disease. Come together right now over me.
Go back into my buses here. Don't want to mess with my guitars. And then I'll start throwing some reverb on some of this stuff. It's getting there.
Here come all flats up, he come grooving up slow over me. over me.
Pretty close. Still want to shape my kick a little bit more.
He back production, he got war is gone through, he got no side or he won side, no cracker, he got beat down below his knees. Cold you in his arms, yeah, you can feel his disease. Come together right now over me, over me.
Now, one cool thing too that you can do on these guys is you can actually move the order. Like if you can go your shape features, your gate, your sustain, your punch into your EQ, into your compressor, or you can use this little button here to kind of flip-flop them. So I'm gonna see what it's like if I put my compressor before my EQ, just to hear on this kick drum. Although I probably think I like it where it is.
Over me.
Nope, I like that better, for sure. So now my EQ is after my compressor.
Come together right now.
Cool. So let's mess around with some effects. Now, this particular Console 1 system, you can, in certain DAWs, you can actually use it as a DAW controller. So you can adjust things like the internal sends that are going on in your internal mixer. It doesn't work like that in Pro Tools yet. Hopefully it will someday. So this is the one spot where I'm gonna have to go over there and just start using Pro Tools. But why I love doing this, and the way that this works is that you put the insert on every single one here, is that now all my Pro Tools faders are just at 0. So if I need to make any trims or slight adjustments or do any kind of automation, although I can automate on here, and I probably will, you can use Pro Tools more as sort of like your trim automation and do anything with your faders there that don't involve sort of mixing everything together. But let's put a little bit of fun on some of these vocals here.
Come on, flats up, he come grooving up slowly. He got two eyeball, he won't hopefully roller. He got hair. Here come on, flats up, he come grooving up slowly. He got
Telephone vocal loves a little slap.
Here come on, flats up, he come grooving up slowly. He got two eyeball, he won't hopefully roller. He got hair down to his knee. Got to be a joker, he just do what he please. Yeah. Here come on, flats up, he come grooving up slowly. He got
Cool, now let's check out that cleaner vocal.
he back production. He got war is gone. He got no side or he won side, no cracker. He got beat down below his knees. Cold you in his arms, yeah, you can feel his disease. Come together right now over me.
I mean, I love the way the drums are sounding as is in the room. Such a gorgeous room. Let's see if we want to put some reverb on the snare or anything like that, but I won't be bummed if we don't. spot there, but there's some just snare. Where is it? Maybe the guitar's on some beautiful. Let's see. Not too fussy.
Got to be a joker, he just do what he please. Yeah. Yeah. He wear no shoe shine, he got two damn football, he got monkey finger, he shoot Coca-Cola, he said, I know you know me. One thing I can tell you is you got to be free. Come together right now over me. Over me. He back production, he got Warren's gone food, he got no cycle, he won side, no cracker, he got beat down below his knees. Caught you in his arms, yeah, you can feel his disease. Come together right now over me.
Ooh, it's getting close. I feel like I can squeak out a little more stank out of my drums here. Let's see. That's my toms here.
Holy roller, he got hair down to his knee. Got to be a joker.
Load my punchy compressor. This is on a tom bus now.
Yeah. Yeah. He wear no shoe shine, he got two damn football, he got monkey finger, he shoot Coca-Cola, he said, I know you know me. One thing I can tell you is you got to be free. Come together right now over me. over me. Keep out production.
It's pretty dang close. Now, there's always more fun stuff you can do, and you can get there and get pedantic and anal with all these sort of things. So now I want to automate this lead guitar, and you can do it on the console one fader in here, but this is where I'm going to sort of like use it almost like the way you do, you know, in SSL, is you kind of just program it in. So I'm going to take this over here and just bump this guy up a little bit. This is the beauty of using a little bit of Pro Tools in your analog workflow.
Over me.
So I can just take this guy and I'll use my volume or my volume trim. And again, this is why I kind of keep everything at 0 on Pro Tools, because then I can just use this as sort of like my little boost.
Over me.
Cool, it's so close. I think I can have a little more fun with my kick drum still. Let's see. Take it out of this mode, go back to my kick. That's getting close. So here I'm using my gate, not only to get rid of some of that bleed, but actually to kind of shape that top of that a little bit. It's giving it a little bit of punch on there. Cranking the high end of this baby, but it's fun.
Grooving up slowly, he got used to eyeball, he won't hopefully roll the he got hair down to his knee. Got to
Just back off the parallel compression a bit on my drum bus here. Fun. So there you have the sort of analog mix flow in a digital environment. Again, I'm using Console One Softube. They have an amazing modeling of classic consoles, and this is the American Class A one. I like to think of it as very aggressive and punchy and in your face, if you see where I'm going there. But I'm gonna do different models on the other songs, and you can check those out too. Again, is there a lot of things that you can do in the digital world, kind of using plugins and all sorts of fun shenanigans that you can't do in the analog world or in the analog workflow world? Absolutely. But the ability to have everything in front of you, keep focused, have your fingers on faders, and sort of keep moving forward and then go back and reshape and then move forward and look at big picture. And I always think of it as like looking under a microscope or sort of like taking a step back. There is something about working more like this where personally I get very lost going into just DAWs and plugins and chains and things like that, where I'm focusing way too much on my plugins themselves and not on my mix. So I love mixing on something like this, and I look forward to mixing the other two songs on the other two consoles.